All right, so when we talk about relationship conflict, oftentimes what we're talking about is a phenomenon known as attack withdrawal phenomenon. And this shows up especially in romantic relationships, but it could actually show up in any relationship, but it's especially likely to show up there. And what the attack withdrawal phenomenon is basically it involves people reacting to their fears and insecurities, fears of abandonment and insecurities, by covering them up with things like anger, attack, and anger in the form of withdrawal. So we would call that a passive aggressive type of anger. Uh, so, but at the bottom of it, really, it's not about attack or withdrawal. It's all about fear and insecurity. And the way that this might look in a relationship is, say you have a husband and a wife, and the wife cooked dinner for her husband who she's expecting to get home from work at about 7 p.m. And 7 p.m. rolls around and he's nowhere to be found. She calls his phone, he doesn't answer, and 7:15 she starts to get a little bit worried that something fishy is going on. Maybe she's, been cheated on in the past. But she starts to wonder, is he having an affair? That's a very disturbing thought. That stirs up a lot of fear, it stirs up a lot of insecurity, so she doesn't want to face it. So what happens? She's going to find some way to dodge all of those feelings. And what she might do is cover it up with secondary anger. And this secondary anger is going to manifest in the form of attack. So when the husband walks through the door, what is she going to say? Where have you been? I had dinner ready, now it's cold, you've ruined my night. And it really has nothing to do with the dinner being cold. She's scared that he was having an affair, but she doesn't say anything about that. She's just attacking him about not being punctual, not being considerate, And when the husband hears this, what happens for him internally? Well, his fears of abandonment are getting triggered as well. His insecurities are getting triggered. His wife, maybe she doesn't love him anymore. Maybe she found somebody else, and that's why she's being so cold to him because, so he doesn't want to face that either. So what does he do? He is going to cover it also with some sort of secondary anger, and then his defense mechanism is more passive. It tends to be more of a withdrawal, right? So he just starts stonewalling her and walks off to his bedroom and slams the door, doesn't want to talk to her. Well, what does that do? When she sees him withdraw, that triggers her fears of abandonment even more. So now she gets even more angry, leading him to feel even more like she must have fallen out of love with him, whatever, which triggers more of his fears, which then makes him withdraw even more. So what we have is a vicious cycle. But if you remember what I said at the beginning, this really has nothing to do with her being upset about the potatoes getting cold, and it really is not about him wanting to withdraw from her. That's just a protective mechanism. What's really going on underneath all of this content, we call that content, what you see on the surface, is the process. And the process is the emotional processes underneath. And in this case, we have two people that are triggering each other's fears of abandonment, each other's fears of insecurity. And so they're not going to talk about that because that's too vulnerable, right? They're just going to continue to play these little games and continue this vicious cycle. So how do we get out of this cycle? How do we get unstuck? One thing that has to happen is you have to have some mindfulness about what's going on with you. Is it really about the potatoes that you're fixating on? Is it really about that? Or is there a fear that's coming up? And when you notice that fear, it's important to be able to sit with it. It's important to be able to tolerate it, to not immediately cover it up with anger. Same thing for the husband. When his wife is lambasting him, instead of just, going up into his mind about, oh, this woman's crazy, I need to get away from her because she's so irrational, I just need to go hide in my room. He needs to pay attention to what he's feeling and notice that fear that perhaps she's fallen out of love with him. Perhaps she's done with the relationship. Perhaps she's planning to file for divorce. And stay with that emotion. And if you can tolerate the emotion, if you can sit with the emotion, then you can do something about it. Then you can actually respond in a healthier way. You're not going to cover it with one of these nasty defense mechanisms, right? So let's take the wife. If she could sit with that emotion of fear, then she could probably channel it into some sort of assertiveness. And same thing with the husband. When we talk about, but what is assertiveness? When I teach people how to be assertive, I usually recommend using a step-by-step process that starts out with some sort of statement of love. And the reason why we do this, you may not be feeling love in the moment, you may be feeling afraid or angry, but we start out by expressing love because that softens the recipient and it lowers their defenses. So you might say something like, I love you to death, and I need you to know. And then the next step is you label the concrete behavior that they just did that bothered you. When you come home late and when you don't text or call to let me know what's going on, it really state the emotion that it produced in you. In this case, it's fear, right? It makes me afraid that something's going on. Maybe you got hurt, maybe you got hit by a car, or maybe you're running around with somebody else, and it makes me very uncomfortable. I don't like that. After you've stated the emotion that it generated in you, then you express your desire for what you'd like to see them do differently. So in this case, it might be, next time you get hung up at work, could you just send me a quick text message to let me know what's going on? Or I would really appreciate it if you would send me a quick text message. It can't be in the form of a demand or a dictate. It's just, you're just letting them know what you would like them to do different in the future. That also helps them to receive it better. And then I usually recommend, ending this with some other loving statement, right? So this might be something like, I don't want you to take this the wrong way. I'm letting you know this because I don't want this to become a pattern in our relationship where, I end up feeling insecure and then getting upset with you. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page and that we're able to, constantly be improving in our relationship. If the person that you're working with tends to have a hard time understanding these sorts of concepts, you may need to actually ask them, can you explain to me, can you repeat that back to me, or did you understand? Are you willing to do that going forward? Get some sort of kind of cooperative statement from them. The same thing would apply for the husband. If his wife didn't do that and she ended up attacking him for being so inconsiderate and making the dinner go cold, he would need to respond by paying attention to his feelings and then responding to her with some sort of I feel statement along these same lines. It makes me angry when you I love you, and when you address me in this way by accusing me of being inconsiderate, it actually make me feel irritated. And I would really appreciate it if in the future if you could just stay calm and tell me what it is I did that bothered you. And I'm not trying to get on your case about this. I love you and I don't want this to create ill will between us. So, that's why I'm bringing this up. Something along those lines. But, paying close attention to your feelings and then channeling them into a constructive, assertive I feel statement can really go a long way to short-circuiting these vicious cycles of attack and withdrawal. So that is in a nutshell, the attack-withdrawal phenomenon, and one way that we can short-circuit it.